The night before I married the crown prince, my father brought home the daughter born to his concubine. Your sister is stunningly beautiful, far more so than you. With her accompanying you to the crown prince's mansion, she'll surely help you secure favor. I found it rather amusing. I'm the one who killed her mother. How could she possibly help me secure favor? As expected, on the wedding day, she stood beside me dressed in a striking plain white gown, stealing everyone's attention, everyone except my husband, His Highness, the Crown Prince. But let me tell you how it all began. My father's beloved concubine, whose eyes were like lustrous pearls, was my mother's younger sister, Aunt Lena. She came to our mansion daily to act out sisterly affection with my mother, laughing over tea, embroidering together, sharing secrets as sisters do. But in reality, she was secretly sleeping with my father behind closed doors, in the very house where my mother lived as the rightful wife. When my mother was 8 months pregnant with her second child, the imperial physician diagnosed it as definitely a boy. My father was overjoyed. He threw banquets, distributed gifts to the servants, and spoke of nothing but his future son who would carry on the family name. During my mother's labor, the pains lasted for hours. The midwives rushed back and forth with hot water and clean cloth. My mother's screams echoed through the corridors, and I sat outside her chamber, my small hands pressed against my ears, tears streaming down my face. I was only 8 years old. It was then, in that moment of agony, that Aunt Lena tearfully confessed to my mother. She knelt beside the birthing bed and admitted that she had not only become my father's concubine, but had also given birth to a daughter for him 8 years prior, a girl named Luna. 8 years ago was the second year after my mother married my father. Those nights when father claimed he was working late at the ministry, those days when he said he was traveling for official business, all lies. The image of a loving couple became a cruel deception, and the affection between sisters turned into the bitterest joke. My mother, consumed by rage and heartbreak, her body already weakened from the difficult labor, could not withstand the shock. The midwives said her blood pressure rose dangerously. She began hemorrhaging. Despite delivering a healthy baby boy, my mother passed away that very night, her hand growing cold in mine, her eyes still wide with betrayal. That night left only me and my infant brother, Adrian, who needed constant care and feeding. I was 8 years old, and I grew up overnight. I followed the wet nurse, learning how to handle my mother's funeral arrangements. I stayed by my infant brother's side, caring for and comforting him when he cried through the night. Meanwhile, my father was at a countryside villa, enjoying the Mid-Autumn Festival with Aunt Lena and their daughter Luna. He did not return for the funeral preparations. He did not hold vigil. He sent word that he was indisposed. On the 7th day after my mother's passing, as tradition demanded we honor her spirit, I dragged my frail, grief-stricken body out of our manor. I walked alone through the streets until I reached the detached residence my father had secretly purchased for Aunt Lena years ago, a beautiful house with a garden, far nicer than the quarters any concubine should possess. As usual, Aunt Lena greeted me with false affection, her smile sweet as poisoned honey. "Lena, my dear child, in a few days your father will welcome me back as his principal wife. You should start calling me mother from now on." Her faint show of affection couldn't hide the triumph glittering in her eyes. She reached out and touched my face with her soft hand, then called over her shoulder. "Luna, Adrian, come here quickly. Meet your elder sister properly." 2 children emerged from the inner rooms. Luna was my age, 8 years old, with delicate features and her mother's pearl-like eyes. The boy, also named Adrian, my father had so little imagination he'd given his bastard son the same name he'd wanted for my mother's child, was about 6. "Come now, greet your elder sister," Aunt Lena urged them. "Elder sister," they chorused, their voices uncertain. Aunt Lena smiled at me indulgently. "Lena, it's your first time meeting your younger siblings, so you must not have brought gifts. When you return to the manor, you must remember to prepare something suitable for them. Even though your mother is no longer here to teach you proper etiquette, you should still be sensible and well-mannered." I smiled back, my hand sliding into my sleeve where I'd hidden a sharp blade, one of my father's daggers I'd taken from his study. My fingers rubbed against the cold metal. "Auntie," I said sweetly, "please come a little closer. I have a white jade hairpin to give you. Mother would have wanted you to have something of hers." Her eyes lit up with greed. A white jade hairpin was worth a considerable sum. She bent down toward me without any hesitation, without any defense, her face close to mine. Her eyes and brows were full of smug satisfaction. The next second, she couldn't smile anymore. Her eyes widened in shock as she clutched at the gushing wound on her neck, blood spurting between her fingers. She opened her mouth to scream, but only a wet gurgling sound emerged. No words, no cries for help, just the sound of air whistling through her severed windpipe. She collapsed to the ground, her body twitching and convulsing, her feet kicking up dust from the floor. Her eyes turned bloodshot, staring at me with disbelief, with betrayal, with the dawning realization that she had underestimated the 8-year-old child before her. Luna and young Adrian screamed, their voices piercing the air. I calmly wiped the blood from the blade on Aunt Lena's expensive silk robe and smiled at the two terrified children. "Please accept this meeting gift from your elder sister." Luna cried hysterically, but she didn't dare approach me, not with the bloody knife still in my hand. "Daddy. Daddy will make you pay. Daddy will avenge Mother. You'll die for this." I looked at her tear-stained face and shook my head. "No, he won't. If news that I killed his concubine gets out, his official career will be over. The scandal would destroy him. Even for his own sake, he will find ways to cover up what happened here. He'll clean up this mess and bury it deep." Luna didn't understand how much her father valued his position and reputation over everything else, including her mother's life. But I did. I had watched him for 8 years. I knew exactly what kind of man he was. Father did indeed handle the matter swiftly. He arranged a quiet funeral for Aunt Lena at the villa, telling everyone she had died of a sudden illness. Then he returned to the manor, and in the privacy of his study, he raised his hand and struck me across the face with such force that I fell to the ground. "You vicious creature," he shouted. "So young and already a murderer. You should die for what you've done." My infant brother, Adrian, cried non-stop in the nursery. The wet nurse, a kind woman who had loved my mother, sent word to my maternal grandmother as I had instructed her to do beforehand. Grandmother arrived with her attendants, and only then was I spared from Father's immediate wrath. But I couldn't escape punishment entirely. Father began putting drugs in my food, herbs that would slowly poison my mind, making me confused and eventually mad. Within a month, I would become crazy and foolish, he told me with cold satisfaction. A tragic fate for a child who had lost her mother and then lost her mind to grief. He hated me for killing his beloved Lena. I hated him for destroying my mother. That was the day my father and I became true enemies. In the middle of winter, when the lake behind our manor froze solid, I made my escape attempt. I jumped into the one section where the ice was thin, breaking through into the freezing water below. It was a near-death experience, a desperate gamble, but I had calculated everything. The shock of the cold water, the servants' screams, the chaos it gave my aunt, my mother's sister, the perfect excuse to storm the manor with her attendants and demand custody of me. My aunt was married to the Marquis of Pingan, a powerful military family. She had always loved my mother dearly and had been devastated by her death. When she heard I'd nearly drowned, possibly due to negligence or worse, she descended on the manor like an avenging fury. Before I left with her, I made sure to deliver a message to my father privately. I stood in his study, still shivering from my ordeal in the frozen lake, and spoke clearly. "Father, if you dare to bring Luna and that boy into our family home to raise them openly, I will go to the magistrate's court. I will beat the drum to lodge an official complaint. I will tell the entire world that you carried on an affair with your wife's younger sister. That you drove your legitimate wife to death with your betrayal. And I will confess that I killed Aunt Lena. I'll explain exactly why I did it and let society judge who was truly at fault." His face turned purple with rage. I continued, my voice steady despite my trembling body. "My death would be a small matter, Father. But the scandal would destroy the entire family. The men would never advance in their careers. The women would never make good marriages. Our family name would be dragged through the mud for generations. So you see, Father, as long as I live, you will never be able to bring your bastard children into our home. You'll have to keep them hidden away forever, like the shameful secrets they are." Father, shaking with fury, stepped forward and slapped me so hard I tasted blood. Then his hands wrapped around my throat, squeezing, choking the life from me. How could I have fathered such a disobedient, unfilial creature? How dare you threaten me? I didn't struggle. I simply smiled at him, even as black spots danced in my vision. Slowly, cold sweat broke out on his forehead. He realized what he was doing, murdering his legitimate daughter where anyone might see, might report. He released me abruptly, and I collapsed to the floor, gasping for air. He stepped back, his hands trembling. "Madman," he whispered, fear creeping into his eyes. "You're a complete madman." I looked up at him and smiled through my bruised, swollen face. "I'm not a madman, father. But you are a coward. I dare to risk my life openly for what I believe in, for avenging my mother. But you don't even dare to openly claim the woman you supposedly loved enough to betray your wife. You have to hide her, hide your children, pretend they don't exist. You're pathetic. You're not even as brave as an 8-year-old child." With my aunt present and threatening legal action, all of my mother's dowry was inventoried and returned to me. The jewelry, the land deeds, the investments, everything that had been my mother's was now under my aunt's protection for my benefit. Grandmother was displeased, but she couldn't protest without admitting there had been mismanagement. She didn't want my baby brother Adrian to leave, though. He was the precious grandson, the only legitimate son. That night, conveniently, Adrian developed a high fever and broke out in red rashes all over his body. My aunt made a tremendous scene, accusing the household of poisoning or neglecting the infant. She raged so loudly that grandmother fainted from the stress. Father, exhausted and cornered, finally waved his hand in defeat. "Take them. Take both of them. The boy isn't my only son, I can have others. Just get out. All of you, get out of my sight." My aunt brought me to the Marquis estate and gave me the very courtyard where my mother had lived during her maiden days. I lived there with my baby brother Adrian and our devoted wet nurse, Nanny Chen. As repayment for my aunt's kindness, I volunteered to enter the palace as Princess Xiaoya's companion reader in place of my cousin. It was a position no one wanted. Princess Xiaoya was known to be imperious, spoiled, and cruel to her companions. Girl after girl had entered the palace only to return home within weeks, crying and sometimes bearing bruises, traumatized by the experience. This time it was my maternal family's turn to send someone, and my aunt couldn't bear to see her own daughter suffer such treatment. I didn't want to remain idle in the safety of the Marquis estate, accepting charity. We reached an agreement that benefited us both. On my first day in the palace, I was punished to kneel for 3 hours. The reason? The princess didn't like my hairstyle. I smiled and thanked her for the correction. The next day, I was hung from a tree by my wrists for having supposedly looked at her the wrong way. My shoulders screamed in agony, but I smiled and thanked her again, right up until I fainted from the pain. I was saved by the crown prince himself, who happened to be passing through the gardens. When I regained consciousness, I was lying on a soft bed in the princess's quarters, and the crown prince was standing nearby, reprimanding his sister with barely controlled anger. I endured my weakness and pain, forced myself to kneel despite my injured shoulders, and spoke up. "Your Highness, please forgive me. It was I who broke Her Highness's favorite cup. It was I who offended her. The punishment was deserved." The crown prince's lecturing voice stopped abruptly. Princess Xiaoya bit her lip and stared at me, surprise flickering across her face. The crown prince took a deep breath and tapped his sister on the head, his voice stern. "Xiaoya, she is not a servant in your palace. She is your companion reader, the daughter of a minister. Her mother was the daughter of the Marquis of Ping'an. Her father is the left vice minister. How can you treat her so unreasonably?" Xiaoya snorted, tossing her head. "She's just the daughter of a 4th-rank official's family. What's so special about that? What does it matter if I discipline her? What if I beat her to death?" "Xiaoya." The crown prince's voice sharpened, then softened with pain. "Her mother just passed away. You should treat her with more compassion. She lost her mother, just as you lost yours. You, of all people, should understand her sorrow." Princess Xiaoya finally fell silent. She looked at me with something that might have been the beginning of kindness, or perhaps just recognition of shared pain. The crown prince helped me to my feet himself, his touch gentle. "You should rest now. You're clearly unwell. I've asked the imperial physicians to prepare medicine for your injuries. Xiaoye is just spoiled. Her nature isn't truly bad. Please don't resent her. I bowed my head respectfully. The princess has been very kind to me, Your Highness. From that day forward, perhaps because we had both lost our mothers at young ages, Princess Xiaoye treated me much better. She no longer punished me arbitrarily or cruelly. I followed her to the Imperial Academy every day. His Majesty doted on Xiaoye, granting her the rare honor of studying alongside the princes, an almost unprecedented privilege for a princess. I served at her side, learning how to manage subordinates, studying the arts of governance and strategy, listening to lectures on the 100 schools of philosophy and military tactics. Princess Xiaoye found these lessons boring, so I ghostwrote all her essays and assignments for her. She loved receiving praise and being the center of attention, and my writings earned her constant commendation from the grand tutors. When it came to my own work, I deliberately hid my abilities and wrote mediocre essays, careful never to outshine her. I wasn't blindly obedient to Xiaoye, nor did I cater to her every whim. When she wanted to do something truly foolish or dangerous, I would try to stop her, even at risk to myself. She would get angry, scold me, sometimes even strike me. But afterward, when she suffered consequences or embarrassment, she would remember that I had tried to warn her. She began to trust my judgment. As time went on, she actually came to depend on me. I became the one person she truly relied on. At the Empress's birthday banquet, when I was 14 and had been in the palace for several months, Princess Xiaoye had a conflict with the 7th princess, who was the daughter of the new empress, the woman who had replaced Xiaoye's deceased mother. During the banquet, the 7th princess deliberately tripped Xiaoye, causing her to stumble into the pond in the imperial garden. As Xiaoye surfaced, sputtering and struggling, the 7th princess stood at the edge and announced loudly, "No one is permitted to save her. You all think her mother is still the empress. Her mother is dead. My mother is empress now. How dare this daughter of a dead woman act so arrogantly? I'll see who dares to rescue her. Whoever tries, I'll have them beaten to death." The eunuchs and palace maids present froze, terrified. They didn't dare disobey the new empress's daughter. A few slipped away quietly to find the crown prince or his majesty, but the palace was vast. By the time they found help and returned, Xiaoye would likely have drowned. I watched Xiaoye thrashing in the water, her heavy robes dragging her down, and I knew this was my opportunity. Without hesitation, I jumped into the pond. Saving her was not easy. Xiaoye couldn't swim, and in her panic, she grabbed onto me, trying to climb on top of me to stay above water. She pushed me under repeatedly. I swallowed mouthfuls of water, my lungs burning, nearly drowning myself. When His Majesty and the Crown Prince finally arrived, they found me struggling desperately to drag an unconscious Xiaoye toward the shore. The Crown Prince's face had gone deathly pale. He was normally gentle and composed, but this was the first time I saw him look at someone with such cold, murderous fury. His gaze fixed on the 7th princess, who took 2 fearful steps backward, then seemed to remember her mother's position and straightened her spine defiantly. The Crown Prince carefully lifted Xiaoye from my arms and laid her on the grass. Then he reached for me, but I deliberately let myself fall backward into the water, making sure to crash against a sharp rock at the pond's edge. The impact broke my arm with an audible crack. Pain exploded through me, but I had achieved what I needed, a serious injury that would demand justice. Without hesitation, the Crown Prince jumped back into the water and pulled me out himself. His Majesty interrogated the palace servants. A young eunuch, trembling with fear, finally spoke the truth. "Your Majesty, it's not that we servants didn't want to save Her Highness the Princess. The 7th princess forbade us from helping. She threatened to have anyone who disobeyed beaten to death. We were too frightened to act." The Crown Prince, his face still cold with rage, walked directly up to the 7th princess. With a swift motion, he slapped her hard across the face. "Imperial father, Empress Mother Yuhua has already passed away. If it weren't for Miss Wei's bravery in defying the 7th princess's threats, if she hadn't jumped in to save Xiaoye, then Xiaoye would be joining Empress Mother in the afterlife right now." His Majesty's eyes filled with guilt and sorrow. He immediately ordered the 7th princess confined to her quarters for 1 full year as punishment. After the imperial physician finished setting the bones in my arm, binding it tightly with splints and cloth, the crown prince dismissed all the palace maids. He personally brought medicine to my bedside to feed me, something a prince should never do for a mere companion reader. He gently blew on the hot medicine to cool it, then held the spoon to my lips. Miss Wei, thank you for what you did today. You saved Xiaoye's life, and likely saved my sanity as well. Imperial Father will reward your family appropriately. I looked up at him, letting tears gather in my eyes. If your highness truly wishes to bestow a reward, could you grant it to my younger brother instead of to me? He looked surprised. Your younger brother? I nodded, letting the tears fall. Your highness, I must tell you the truth. My father has an outside woman, actually, she was my mother's own sister. After my mother's death, he wanted to bring that woman's children into our household. My younger brother and I had to flee to my aunt's estate for safety. We now live under the Marquis of Pingan's protection. I paused, letting my voice break with emotion. My brother is so young, your highness. Although my aunt cares for him kindly, I worry about him every day and every night. We are the only family each other has in this world. If I could request anything, I would ask that His Majesty grant my little brother some recognition, some small title or reward, so that my uncle and aunt will value him more, so that he might have a better future. As I spoke, tears rolled down my cheeks like scattered pearls. I looked small and pitiful, a brave girl trying to protect her baby brother. The crown prince's expression grew complex. He set down the medicine bowl and handed me his own silk handkerchief. His eyes reddened slightly with emotion. He was 14 years old, still so young himself. When his mother, the late Empress, had died, he had been only 8, the same age I was when I lost my mother. He had brought his confused, grief-stricken little sister Xiaoye through the treacherous palace politics, dealing with the schemes of His Majesty's new favorites, caring for Xiaoye while bearing the heavy responsibilities of being crown prince. He never dared to slack in his studies, knowing that one mistake could cost him everything. He understood loss. He understood loneliness. He understood the desperate need to protect the only family you had left. Miss Wei. Linger, he said softly, using my personal name for the first time. May I call you by your name? My eyes widened slightly, and I looked at him with surprise and hope. Your Highness. He picked up the medicine bowl again and held it out to me with a gentle smile. Then you should call me, just call me Your Highness for now. But between us, there can be less formality. My eyes lit up genuinely. Really? Thank you, Your Highness. He smiled warmly. Of course, Linger. He already remembered my name. He had noticed me. The first seeds were planted. From that day forward, the crown prince visited me every day while I recovered. After Princess Xiaoye regained her health, she began visiting too, awkwardly carrying a bowl of chicken soup that she had clearly tried to make herself. Her fingers and the backs of her hands bore fresh burn marks. She set the soup down in front of me with a scowl. Look how thin you've become. If people didn't know better, they'd think I've been starving you. She crossed her arms. Drink it while it's hot. I looked at her burned fingers and blinked back tears. Xiaoye was terrified of pain, yet she had hurt herself making this for me. She asked irritably, I've been so mean to you all this time. Why did you save me? Weren't you afraid of dying? I forced down a spoonful of the soup, which was honestly quite terrible, too salty and with an odd bitter aftertaste. Your Highness has always treated me very well. She turned her face away, her eyes stubborn and proud. Liar. You're such a hypocrite. But for the next 2 weeks, she brought me soup every single day without fail. And gradually, the taste improved from barely edible to actually quite good. Her attitude toward me shifted from casual disdain to genuine respect. She began to take me seriously, to value my opinions, to open her heart to me. After my arm healed, I continued my studies and duties with Princess Xiaoye. She stopped bringing other maids along to our lessons. She no longer made me carry all her books and materials alone. Instead, she would help me carry things, insisting I shouldn't strain my injured arm. The Crown Prince contacted me regularly, asking about Xiaoye's daily activities and well-being. After we discussed his sister, he would ask about my own life, showing genuine concern. He occasionally brought me news of my little brother Adrian, who was now living comfortably at the Marquis estate and beginning his own education. The Crown Prince sometimes gave me small gifts from outside the palace: books, hair ornaments, sweets. He knew that all the essays Princess Xiaoye submitted, the ones praised repeatedly by the grand tutors, were actually written by me. Even though Xiaoye herself didn't know he knew. He often sought me out privately to discuss classical texts and political philosophy, testing my knowledge, challenging my ideas. I studied diligently every night by lamplight, never daring to slack off for even a moment. I knew this opportunity was precious and fragile. One mistake, one moment of negligence, and everything I was building could disappear. Mother was dead. Father had become someone else's father, caring only for his bastard children. Adrian was young and vulnerable. I was his only protection in this world. I had to succeed. I had to rise. There was no alternative. Spring turned to autumn, then to winter, then to spring again. 6 years passed in the palace. I came of age at 20. Princess Xiaoye gave me a beautiful coming-of-age gift, a shimmering, ethereal dress made of the finest silk, embroidered with phoenixes and peonies. The Crown Prince, who was now 20, gave me a gift as well. When I opened the box, I found a simple wooden hairpin, carefully carved and polished by hand. Xiaoye scoffed when she saw it. "Elder brother, you're the Crown Prince of the nation. How can your gift be so plain and unimpressive?" I held the hairpin carefully, genuinely touched. "I love it. It's beautiful." The Crown Prince's ears turned slightly red. "It's not much, but I made it myself. I thought it might mean more that way." That night, in the garden under the moonlight, I gave him the silk pouch I had embroidered over many months and confessed my feelings directly. "Your Highness, I have come to care for you deeply. More than is proper for a companion to her princess's brother. I know I shouldn't speak of this, but I cannot keep silent any longer." He looked stunned, his face flushing. His earlobes turned bright red, and he took a step back. "Linga, I'm honored, truly. But I only see you as a sister. A dear friend and sister, nothing more." I lowered my eyes and nodded, keeping my expression neutral even though my heart raced with calculated satisfaction. This was exactly the response I'd expected. "Oh, I see. I apologize for my presumption, Your Highness. I won't mention it again." I turned and walked away, leaving him standing alone in the garden. When we met the next day, he was clearly uncomfortable, avoiding my gaze. But my expression was calm, showing no awkwardness whatsoever. I treated him exactly as I always had, respectfully, warmly, as a trusted friend. His stiffness only increased, which visibly displeased Princess Xiaoye. "Elder brother, what's wrong with you?" she demanded. "Why do you look like someone died? Stop being so gloomy." I smiled and chimed in. "Yes, elder brother. Is something troubling you? You seem upset." He stared at me, stunned by my use of the term elder brother. Xiaoye looked confused. "Why are you calling him elder brother?" I said innocently, "Because His Highness said he sees me as a sister. So he's my elder brother now." Xiaoye burst out laughing. "That's perfect. I always wanted a sister anyway. I accept you as my sister-in-law or sister, I suppose, if my brother is being stupid about it." My eyes curved into crescents with my smile, but only the Crown Prince seemed disturbed. His lips pressed into a tight line, his gaze falling on me with an expression I couldn't quite read. I immediately stopped doing the intimate things I'd done before, stopped embroidering clothes for him, stopped leaving little gifts in his study. But I didn't abandon my campaign entirely. I simply shifted tactics. The Crown Prince had a chronic throat condition and was an extremely picky eater. Every year, I carefully selected the best chrysanthemums, prepared them according to medicinal recipes, and sent them to him for his health. I studied under the imperial physicians, learning dietary therapy and nutrition. I thought of ways to prepare foods that would be both delicious and beneficial for his condition. I had spent 6 years integrating myself into every aspect of his life, from grand political essays to every small daily comfort. Whether in his studies or his personal life, I was involved in everything, investing tremendous effort into becoming indispensable. And now I cut it all off. For 2 weeks, I was polite in public settings but distant in private. I avoided being alone with him. I kept our conversations brief and formal. He finally couldn't bear it anymore. One evening, he cornered me in a corridor and tried to speak to me gently, familiarly, as he used to. I interrupted him with a bright smile. "Elder brother, it's quite late. Perhaps we should talk another day? Oh, I should mention I've already told my family that your highness has acknowledged me as your sister. Please don't be angry with me for using your name that way. I'm alone in this world with my little brother, and I wanted to gain some small advantage from the connection. I hope you don't mind." I paused, then delivered my carefully prepared blow. "Actually, tomorrow I'm returning home to prepare for my marriage. Uncle has found me an excellent match." His smile froze on his face. His jaw tightened. His fingers rubbed together unconsciously, then clenched into fists, veins spreading across the backs of his hands. "Marriage?" His voice was tight. Who are you marrying?" Each word seemed to cost him tremendous effort. I smiled radiantly, letting excitement fill my voice. "I don't know yet for certain. The results of the imperial examinations are coming out soon. Uncle is preparing to let me choose from the top candidates. There's one from Sichuan province named Chen Yarrow who seems very promising. Uncle says that although Chen Yarrow's family is poor, his writing and character are excellent." I clasped my hands together, looking dreamy. I was uncertain at first, but then I read his examination essays. "Your Highness, you don't know how elegant his calligraphy is, and his arguments are so sophisticated and beautiful." When I read his work, it felt like meeting an old friend from a past life. "I just want to meet him immediately and get to know him." The Crown Prince's eyes darkened. The warmth around him seemed to evaporate. His eyes and brows looked as though they'd been covered in ice and snow. His fingers trembled slightly at his sides. I continued enthusiastically, "Elder brother, you don't understand. I've been in the palace for so long, I've met so few men outside. I thought what I felt for you was love, but it must have just been because you were the only young man I knew well. Uncle sent me Chen Yarrow's portrait, and oh, your highness, he's so handsome. He has a face like jade and such refined scholarly bearing. I like him so much already. I really want to meet him as soon as possible." The Crown Prince's expression went completely cold. His smile had vanished entirely. His eyes were dark and unreadable, almost frightening. I glanced at the darkening sky and exclaimed, "Oh my, it's getting so late. Thank you for treating my brother and me so well all these years, your highness. Adrian is now studying at the Imperial Academy thanks to your recommendation and support. Your younger sister is immensely grateful for everything." I turned to leave, waving cheerfully over my shoulder. "You should return to your quarters quickly. I need to finish packing. I must sleep early tonight so I can wake up early tomorrow to have my hair and makeup done properly. It wouldn't do to meet Chen Yarrow with dark circles under my eyes." Suddenly, he grabbed my wrist, gripping it tightly enough to hurt. His eyes were sharp, almost desperate. I looked at him with confusion. "Elder brother." "Don't call me that," he said through gritted teeth, his voice harsh. I softened my voice, speaking timidly. Your highness." He pursed his lips, staring into my eyes. His dark lashes cast shadows on his cheeks in the lantern light. From nearby, we heard eunuchs and maids greeting someone, "Greetings to Her Highness Princess Xiaoya." Only then did he seem to snap out of whatever trance he'd been in. He released my wrist abruptly. I turned my head, and my carefully neutral gaze collided with Princess Xiaoya's eyes. She stood a few paces away, watching us with an expression of shock and hurt. Perfect. She had finally arrived. My effort in arranging for her maid to tell her where to find us hadn't been wasted. After returning to Xiaoya's quarters, the princess sat in her high seat and ordered me to kneel before her. After I knelt, she picked up a porcelain cup and hurled it at my forehead. It shattered against my skin, and blood began trickling down my face. I loosened my hair from its pins, letting it fall around my shoulders. Xiaoya's eyes reddened with tears. She looked simultaneously heartbroken and furious. "You approached me just to become crown princess, didn't you? That was your plan all along." I lowered my gaze and wiped the blood from my forehead with my sleeve. "I'm leaving tomorrow. My family has found me another match." "Xiaoya, I don't owe you anything. Whether my affection was genuine or calculated, I put real effort into our friendship. I treated you as well as I knew how. Tears streamed down her face. Get out, she screamed. Get out of my sight. I slowly stood up and picked up the bag I'd already packed days ago in preparation for this moment. I had secretly given the peace charm I'd embroidered for Xiaoya's upcoming birthday to a palace maid I trusted, with instructions to give it to the princess later. Before Xiaoya could say anything else, I walked toward the door in silence, my own eyes red with unshed tears. In the drawer of my desk in the small room I'd occupied for 6 years lay another gift I'd prepared for Xiaoya, something far more precious than a peace charm. Her mother, the late Empress, had embroidered a beautiful cloak for her when Xiaoya was just a child. After the Empress passed away, the 7th princess had deliberately damaged that cloak, tearing the embroidery and staining it with ink. I had seen Xiaoya, countless nights, holding that ruined cloak and sobbing for her dead mother. There were hundreds of skilled embroiderers in the palace, but not one would take on the job of repairing it. It wasn't because they lacked skill. It was because they knew Xiaoya's temperament and feared that if she wasn't satisfied with the repair, she would have them beaten bloody and thrown out of the palace. So they all claimed their skills weren't good enough. I had been secretly repairing that cloak for months, working on it late at night by candlelight. It was nearly finished. I had planned to give it to Xiaoya as a birthday gift, the ultimate proof of my loyalty and affection. Princess Xiaoya seemed heartless and cruel on the surface, but she was actually fierce on the outside and vulnerable within. She would soften toward me again. I was certain of it. I had been planning this for years, playing the role she needed, unconditionally satisfying her emotional demands while slowly making myself irreplaceable. How could an untroubled, spoiled little princess escape the careful trap laid for her by a patient hunter? I walked through the palace corridors with blood on my forehead, tears in the corners of my eyes, my hair disheveled, clutching my simple bag of belongings. I deliberately chose the route with the most foot traffic, where the most servants would see my pitiful state. There was constant whispering and gossip along the way. Everyone could see that I had been punished and dismissed by Princess Xiaoya. When the crown prince arrived at Xiaoya's quarters looking for me, I had already left the palace grounds. He rode after me on horseback, calling my name anxiously. Linga, Linga, wait. I looked back, gave him a bleak, watery smile, and climbed into a simple carriage that was waiting for me. I didn't say a word to him. I just pulled the curtain closed. Everyone at court would know by tomorrow that I had offended Princess Xiaoya, His Majesty's most beloved daughter, and been cast out of the palace in disgrace. When I arrived at the Marquis of Pingan's estate, my uncle and aunt greeted me with sympathetic expressions. During the evening meal, my aunt said apologetically, "You've suffered so much these past years, Linga. But now you don't need to worry anymore. Your uncle and I will take good care of you and Adrian from now on. You're safe here." My uncle set down his chopsticks and spoke seriously. "Chen Yarrow is a young man of excellent character. This marriage will be a good one for you. Your mother's entire dowry will serve as your trousseau, and your aunt and I will add to it as well. When Adrian is old enough to marry, we'll arrange a good match for him too. You don't need to worry about anything." I put down my own chopsticks and smiled at them. "Uncle, are you truly willing to take such a gamble on me?" He looked confused. "What do you mean? Are you willing to bet on my ability to change our family's fortunes entirely?" I clarified. "To bet that I can soar high into the clouds and bring the entire family with me?" Understanding dawned in his eyes, followed by calculation and hope. The next day, wearing rough cotton clothes and carrying only a small travel bag, I left the Marquis of Pingan's estate. I walked through the bustling streets of the capital and made my way to my father's manor, the Chancellor's residence. When I knocked on the door, the butler's eyes nearly popped out of his head. He stared at me as if seeing a ghost, then suddenly turned and ran inside, shouting at the top of his lungs, "Old madam, master, the eldest young miss has returned." I heard my father's voice from inside, dripping with disdain. "What is she doing back here?" I smiled and stepped inside. My gaze landed on the young woman standing beside my father, Luna, now grown into a beautiful woman of 19, her mother's daughter in every way. "Naturally, I've come to show filial piety to my father," I said sweetly. "What daughter wouldn't want to care for her aging father?" During my 6 years in the palace, my father had been busy securing advantageous futures for Luna and her brother. He had registered both of them under the second branch of the family as illegitimate children. He'd originally wanted to claim them as legitimate, but I had sent a message from the palace, a dagger wrapped in silk, with a note reminding him of our agreement. After that, Luna and young Adrian remained illegitimate. But being illegitimate didn't stop my father from investing everything in these two. He hired famous scholars to tutor the boy and employed an accomplished woman to teach Luna music, chess, calligraphy, painting, and all the refined arts expected of a noble lady. In just a few years, Luna had gained considerable fame in the capital for her talents and beauty. After father officially registered Luna and Adrian in the family genealogy under the second branch, he hired several skilled martial artists to guard that part of the estate, clearly to prevent me from getting anywhere near his precious children. When my father learned I'd returned after offending the princess, after the Marquis estate had essentially abandoned me to my fate, his entire demeanor changed. That very evening, he had me seized and thrown into the woodshed. He locked the door himself and spoke through the wooden slats. "Since you've returned, don't even think about leaving the Wei family again. You've offended Princess Xiaoye, and the Marquis estate has washed their hands of you. Who else can protect you now? Linga, the debt you owe Lena, we'll settle it slowly, you and I." I was strictly guarded in that woodshed. But my father didn't dare kill me outright, not yet. Someone from the Yang family had come to inquire privately about my availability for marriage. Lord Yang was the Salt Surveillance Commissioner, an enormously wealthy position. My father was desperately short on funds for Luna's dowry and for securing Adrian's future through the right connections and bribes. Lord Yang's offer was tempting. Among the servants assigned to guard me, there was one who had been bribed by my aunt. Every midnight, this servant would bring me clean food and water, keeping me alive and informed of what was happening outside. For Princess Xiaoye's 20th birthday banquet, the palace unexpectedly sent an invitation to the Chancellor's residence, to my father's house specifically. My father couldn't decide what to do. He paced his study, then finally came to the woodshed and stared at me with dark suspicion. "What does this mean? What is the princess planning?" I was lying in a pile of straw, weak and disheveled. "I don't know, father." "How would I know?" He grabbed me by the front of my robe and hauled me up, his teeth clenched. "Don't try any tricks, girl. I'm warning you." His eyes shifted back and forth as he calculated. He wanted to bring Luna to the banquet, to show her off to Princess Xiaoye and maybe gain favor that way. But he was afraid I would hurt his precious daughter if given the chance. In the end, he decided to send only me. At the banquet, I was seated at the very lowest place, far from the head table. All sorts of mocking glances and whispered comments came my way throughout the evening. I lowered my eyes and accepted it all with a small, humble smile, saying nothing in my own defense. The noblewoman seated at the very top of the rankings, Princess Xiaoye herself, slowly clenched her wine goblet as she watched this happen. Her knuckles turned white. After the banquet ended, I rose to leave quietly. One of Xiaoye's personal maids stopped me. "Miss Wei, Her Highness requests your presence." I followed the maid to a private chamber where Xiaoye waited, her face stern and cold. She stood with her arms crossed, looking every inch the imperial princess. She spoke loudly, clearly for the benefit of the servants present. "You have considerable nerve, Wei Linga. You took the cloak that Empress Mother left me without permission. What crime do you plead?" I immediately covered my face and dropped to my knees, kowtowing. "Your Highness, please calm your anger. This humble woman accepts whatever punishment you decree." Xiaoye seemed to choke on her next words. She paced back and forth twice, looking genuinely flustered beneath her anger. "Finally," she said, "I sentence you to finish repairing that cloak properly." I kept my head bowed. "Your Highness, embroidery requires delicate, soft fingers. This humble woman is no longer capable of such fine work. Please find someone else." "What?" Xiaoye strode forward and grabbed my hand, pulling it up to examine it. "What do you mean you can't? You've always been skilled at." She stopped speaking abruptly. Her gaze fell on my hands, which were covered in cuts, burns, and half-healed wounds from washing clothes in harsh lye soap and doing rough manual labor. She stared at my ruined hands, momentarily speechless. When she finally found her voice, it trembled. Who did this to you? No one, Your Highness, I said quietly, pulling my hand back. I'm simply unable to repair your cloak. Please find another embroiderer. The palace gates will be locked soon, so I should take my leave now. I stood and began limping toward the door. My father had beaten my legs with a rod 2 days ago, and the bruises made it painful to walk. Linga, Xiaoye's voice cracked. She hurried after me. What happened to your leg? Linga, stop. Tell me what happened. It's nothing, Your Highness. I really must go. I practically fled, and she pursued me through the corridors. Linga, don't run. You're hurt. At that very moment, the Crown Prince was preparing to visit Xiaoye with birthday gifts. As he passed through the palace gates, he happened to walk by just as my family's carriage was preparing to depart. He overheard several maids and the coachman gossiping loudly by the roadside, clearly not expecting anyone important to be listening. That Wei Linga still thinks she's a grand young lady, one maid laughed. Her mother is dead, the Marquis estate has abandoned her, and she offended the princess. How much longer does she think the master will let her live? Right now the master just has her washing clothes and chopping firewood, scrubbing chamber pots and eating spoiled food, another agreed. That's the only reason she's still breathing. Oh, but haven't you heard? A third woman chimed in with malicious glee. The master is planning to marry her off to Lord Yang as a concubine. The Yang family is offering half a boat full of betrothal gifts, an enormous amount. The master wants to use all that money to pave the way for second Miss Luna and third young Master Adrian. Lord Yang, someone gasped. But he's 55 years old. He's older than the master himself. And he's gone through so many concubines, another maid added in a hushed voice. They say several die mysteriously every year in his household. That Wei Linga is as good as dead. Well, second Miss and third young master are both illegitimate, yet they live like royalty while the legitimate eldest daughter lives worse than a servant. The ways of the world are truly strange. The Crown Prince's gift box fell from his hands and clattered to the ground. Princess Xiaoye, who had chased me out to the palace gates, caught the end of this conversation as well. She rushed over and grabbed my shoulders, her face pale with shock. Is it true? Is what they're saying true? Linga, answer me. I dodged her reaching hands and dropped to my knees in the dirt, kowtowing frantically. Your Highness, please forgive this foolish woman. It was my own stupid, wishful thinking, coveting your brother's affection when I had no right. I already know I was wrong. Your Highness, please have mercy. I kept my forehead pressed to the ground. In a few days, my father will marry me off to Lord Yang as a concubine. I'll be leaving the capital to accompany Lord Yang to his post in Yangzhou. I won't be here to bother your Highness anymore, so please, I beg you, just let me go. How can you marry that man? Xiaoye shouted, her voice breaking. Everyone knows Lord Yang's concubines die under suspicious circumstances. How can you? I interrupted her with a bitter laugh. Isn't this what your Highness wanted? To punish me for my presumption? I never. Xiaoye looked genuinely horrified. Linga, I didn't tell anyone to do this. Do you really think I would? Perhaps your Highness didn't explicitly arrange it, I said, my voice hollow with despair. But everyone knows you despise me now. You're the Emperor's most beloved daughter. Naturally, many people want to curry favor with you by stepping on me, by showing you how thoroughly I can be humiliated. I looked up at her, letting all my anguish show. Xiaoye, have I not treated you well all these years? What did I do that was so wrong? Just because I developed feelings for your brother, I deserve to be tortured like this. Destroyed like this. Tears streamed down my face. Do you know I could have married Chen Yarrow, the top scholar? I could have had a good life, a respectable marriage. But now everything is ruined. I have nothing left. If you and your brother still aren't satisfied, if my suffering isn't enough, then just kill me now and be done with it. Xiaoye's lips trembled. Tears poured down her face, and her carefully maintained pride shattered completely. She suddenly looked like the little girl she'd been when we first met, lost and heartbroken. Linga, no, she sobbed. I didn't know. I swear I didn't know any of this was happening. I didn't want this. She reached for my hands again, but I pulled away and stepped back. It doesn't matter anymore, I said quietly. Nothing matters now. I turned and limped toward my carriage without looking back. Through the gap in the carriage curtain as I climbed inside, I saw Xiaoye crying and running toward her brother, asking him desperately, "What do I do? Elder brother, what am I supposed to do?" The crown prince stood frozen, his face ashen. He closed his eyes briefly, and when he opened them again, they were red-rimmed and filled with a chilling coldness I'd never seen before. His voice was flat and hard as iron. "What to do? It's simple. Those who should apologize will apologize. And those who should die will die." When I arrived back at my father's manor, I had barely stepped down from the carriage before my father slapped me hard across the face. He ordered me to kneel in the courtyard. He pointed at my face and shouted loud enough for all the servants to hear, "You have such nerve, offending even a princess. I can't keep you here anymore. You'll go with Lord Yang as planned. You've brought this on yourself." Lord Yang himself was there, his fat belly preceding him as he waddled over. He reached out to touch my face with his pudgy, sweating hand. "Now, Lord Wei, don't hit her too hard. Look at this pretty little face. We wouldn't want to damage it." Before his disgusting fingers could make contact with my skin, an arrow flew from somewhere beyond the courtyard wall and pierced straight through his palm. Lord Yang fell to the ground, wailing in agony. Who dares? My hand." My father, terrified, quickly hid behind a pillar, his eyes darting around frantically. I sneered inwardly. Just sending my portrait to the Yang family had been enough to make Lord Yang develop lustful intentions toward me. He had been opposing my uncle in the imperial court repeatedly, trying to undermine the Marquis of Pingan's position. His death would be no injustice. The Crown Prince arrived with a full contingent of the embroidered uniform guard, the Emperor's personal investigators. He unrolled an imperial edict and read it aloud. "Lord Yang is found guilty of corruption, bribery, and embezzlement of state funds. He is hereby stripped of all ranks and titles and remanded for immediate investigation and prosecution." My father immediately scrambled several feet away from Lord Yang. "I'm not his accomplice. I have nothing to do with his crimes. Nothing. No one paid him any attention." The Crown Prince dismounted from his horse, walked directly to where I knelt, and bent down. He extended his hand to me. "Linga." I closed my eyes briefly, then opened them and looked up at him. "Why is your highness here?" His jaw tightened. He grasped my wrist firmly and pulled me to my feet. "To marry you." I blinked at him, affecting confusion. "Your highness must be joking." Without another word, he lifted me onto his horse. He took me directly to the Eastern Palace, his private residence as Crown Prince. Once inside, he led me to his treasury and showed me an elaborate list of betrothal gifts. "The day you left the palace," he said, his voice intense, "I traveled immediately to my maternal grandfather's estate. I brought back all the betrothal gifts that my mother, Empress Yuhua, had prepared for her future daughter-in-law before she died. I also convinced my grandfather, who had retired from court, to come out of retirement to attend our wedding ceremony and meet his future granddaughter-in-law." I stared at the list, tears gathering in my eyes. "You said you didn't like me," I whispered, my voice breaking. "You said you only saw me as a sister." "I was lying," he said desperately. "I was a fool. I do like you, Linga. I love you. I just didn't understand my own heart. I was stupid and blind." He curved his finger under my chin and gently wiped away my tears. His voice softened, becoming almost pleading. "I don't expect you to forgive me right away. But will you let me spend the rest of my life making amends? Please don't ignore me anymore. And please stop calling me elder brother. I can't bear it. It's killing me." I looked into his eyes, seeing the desperation and sincerity there. Then I threw my arms around his neck and held him tightly. My own eyes were clear and calculating even as I pressed my face against his shoulder. "Your Highness," I whispered. "I've been so sad. You hurt me so much. You'll have to work very hard to make me forgive you." He wrapped his arms around me, holding me as though I might disappear. "I will. I promise. I'll spend every day making it up to you." My wedding to the Crown Prince was announced officially. My father was so furious he spent every day at home cursing, pacing, turning red in the face. I would sit in the main hall, cracking sunflower seeds and watching him with amusement. One day I tossed a handful of shells in his direction. "Father, do you know why you're still alive and well?" He glared at me with pure hatred. I smiled pleasantly. "Because if something happened to you, if you were arrested or executed, I would become the daughter of a criminal. That would complicate my position. So you see, your life depends entirely on my status remaining unblemished." I stood and walked closer, lowering my voice. "But you should be very, very careful from now on. One never knows when accidents might happen. Sudden illnesses. Mysterious deaths. These things occur all the time, especially to men who've made many enemies." His body trembled. His teeth clenched so hard I could hear them grinding. After a few quiet days, my father made one final, desperate move. The day before my wedding to the Crown Prince, he returned to the manor with Luna beside him. She was dressed in her finest robes, her hair elaborately styled, looking every inch a noble lady. My father's face was grim as he addressed me. "Your appearance is merely ordinary, while your sister Luna is a beauty of national renown, far lovelier than you could ever hope to be. She will accompany you to the Eastern Palace as your attendant. With her by your side, she will surely help you maintain the Crown Prince's favor." Luna stood silently beside him, her face expressionless. Father's voice dropped to a menacing whisper that only I could hear. "This is what you owe her, Linga. Don't forget how her mother died and who killed her. If you don't agree to take her with you, I'll expose everything. I'll tell the world what you did. Your reputation will be ruined. You'll never be able to marry into the Eastern Palace. We'll all be destroyed, but at least you won't get what you want." The tables had turned. Now he was the one threatening me with a nothing-to-lose attitude. I looked at Luna with a smile that didn't reach my eyes. "Sister Luna, do you truly want to enter the Eastern Palace with me?" Her gaze was cold and sharp as a blade. She spoke slowly, enunciating each word carefully. "This sister will take very good care of you, elder sister. I'll ensure your favor in the Eastern Palace never wavers." I nodded calmly. "Very well. You may accompany me tomorrow." If she wanted to court death so badly, I could only fulfill her wish. The next morning, Luna did not arrive at the manor as planned. The wedding procession waited. The Crown Prince's representatives grew impatient. It wasn't until the Crown Prince himself came to escort me to the ceremony that Luna finally appeared. She was dressed entirely in white robes, white hair ornaments, completely without makeup or color. In our culture, white is the color of mourning and death. To wear white to a wedding is an unspeakable insult. But I had to admit, she looked ethereal and stunning. She had a dignified bearing, and her steps were graceful. She looked like a goddess descended from heaven, pure and untouchable. She positioned herself beside me, took my hand with false gentleness, and bowed to the Crown Prince alongside me. My bright red wedding robes served as the perfect backdrop to showcase her beauty in white. No wonder people said a woman looked best in white. It was designed to make her stand out, to draw every eye. And indeed, everyone present stared at Luna with shock and fascination. Everyone except the Crown Prince. His expression was uglier than I'd ever seen it. He looked at Luna as though she were already a corpse, with cold contempt and barely restrained fury. Luna, however, didn't miss the brief flash of astonishment in some of the male guests' eyes. She smiled with satisfaction, clearly believing her plan had worked. She met the Crown Prince's gaze boldly, attempting to communicate with him through meaningful looks, as though they shared some secret understanding. I sighed inwardly. She truly was foolish. Even if she wanted to steal attention, she shouldn't have chosen my wedding day, my wedding to the Crown Prince, to do it. This ceremony represented not only my reputation but the honor and dignity of the entire royal family. Wearing mourning white to a royal wedding was not just an insult to me, it was an insult to the Crown Prince, to the Emperor, to the very throne itself. Princess Xiaoye, who was attending as the groom's sister, went absolutely rigid with rage. She strode forward and slapped Luna hard across the face. "Who do you think you're trying to provoke? This is the Crown Prince and Crown Princess's wedding. You dare to wear mourning white? Are you trying to curse them? Are you trying to die?" She turned to the guards. "Drag this creature out and beat her to death with rods immediately." Luna showed no fear. Instead, she turned her tear-filled eyes toward the crown prince, her expression pleading and pitiful, clearly expecting him to intervene on her behalf, to be moved by her beauty and save her. The crown prince's frown deepened. Luna's eyes lit up with hope. Then he spoke, his voice cold as winter ice. "Beating her to death would bring bad luck to the wedding. Xiaoye is right that this is inauspicious. Just have her hang herself quietly somewhere out of sight. Don't let her pollute the celebration." Luna's face went white with genuine terror. "Your Highness, please." Xiaoye gestured sharply to the guards. "What are you waiting for? Are you all deaf? Remove her from my sight immediately. I won't have my sister-in-law's joyful day ruined by this creature." The guards seized Luna and dragged her away, her screams fading as they took her to a distant courtyard. Later that day, after the wedding ceremony concluded, we received word that Luna had indeed hanged herself as ordered. My father, when he heard the news, vomited blood and collapsed. He wanted desperately to reveal what I had done as a child, to tell everyone that I had murdered Lena and drag me down with him. But he couldn't bring himself to do it, not when it would also destroy Adrian, his beloved illegitimate son, his last remaining tie to the woman he'd loved. He always had too many considerations, too many conflicting desires. That was why he was destined to lose to me. I didn't even need to make a direct move against him. I simply shed a few tears when I met with Princess Xiaoya one afternoon, talking about some of the tragic abuses I'd suffered in my childhood, the cruelty of my father. One morning, shortly after, my father suffered a massive stroke. His legs couldn't move. His mouth couldn't form coherent words. Half his face drooped uselessly. When I went to visit him in his sickbed, he mumbled frantically, trying desperately to communicate. But his words were completely incoherent, impossible to understand. Adrian, the illegitimate son my father had doted on for years, stood behind me during this visit. He looked guilty and wouldn't meet father's eyes. I smiled gently. "Adrian, why don't you look at father? If it weren't for you feeding him his medicine so carefully every day, how could he have deteriorated so quickly? This is all thanks to your dedicated care." Father's eyes widened with horror. His entire body trembled with the realization of what his beloved son had done to him. I crouched down beside his bed. My gaze fell on his face, studying every detail of his suffering. I wanted to remember this moment, to savor it. In my mind, I saw another face on a different bed, years ago. My mother's frail body lying there, her belly swollen with pregnancy, covered with a thin crimson quilt. Blood everywhere. Her tears mixing with sweat, trickling into her hair, soaking into the pillow. She had cried out in pain so mournfully, until she saw me standing in the doorway. Then she tried to smile, tried to be strong. "Linga. Mama's little Linga." She clutched my hand desperately. "I have to live. I can't die. My Linga is so young. What will happen to you if I die?" Her healthy color drained away in mere minutes. Her lips cracked and bled. She heard the newborn baby crying and held my hand so tightly her nails drew blood, though she seemed unaware of it. She was panicked, helpless, unwilling to let go of life. She struggled so hard. Her tears splashed onto my arm. Finally, her hand stiffened. She touched my face one last time and asked sadly, "My child, without your mother, how will you survive? And what about your little brother?" I had been numb with shock and grief, clutching her hand, trying desperately to warm her icy fingers with my burning cheek. "Mama, I'll live well. I'll take good care of my little brother. Mama, please live. I'll be filial. I won't be naughty anymore. I'll practice piano without complaining. My fingers don't hurt anymore, Mama. But my heart hurts so much. I'm so scared." Heaven had not pitied me. Heaven had not kept my mother alive just because I was frightened. And heaven would not save my father just because he was angry and desperate now. I smiled at him through my tears. "Father, the debt you owe mother. Heaven won't collect it. But I will. I'll seek justice for her. I promise you that." He stared at me, tears leaking from his eyes, his face twisted with impotent rage. I leaned closer and whispered, You're waiting for the day my beauty fades and the crown prince's love for me disappears, aren't you? You want to see me cast aside and suffering. Well, you can wait all you like. But you'll wait forever. I straightened up. Love, to me, is nothing but a ladder to climb higher. Perhaps one day I will die because of my own schemes and ambitions. But I will never, ever be defeated by something as weak and unreliable as a man's love. In the 3 months after I married the crown prince, I worked tirelessly to build my reputation. Under the title of crown princess, I distributed food to the poor every day. I worked with officials to build houses for disaster victims in the surrounding regions. I personally went to the fields and planted grain alongside farmers, showing that even a princess was not above honest work. I established sewing rooms and kitchens where displaced women could learn skills to support themselves rather than having to resort to begging or prostitution. When I was 3 months pregnant, the 8th prince's horse went mad in the street during a public procession. I saw an elderly man about to be trampled and pushed him out of the way, taking the impact myself. I lost the baby. The old man turned out to be a former grand tutor who had retired and returned to his hometown, one of His Majesty's most respected teachers. The 8th prince was severely punished and sent away from the capital to a remote military post. The crown prince, because of my sacrifice, received commendation from His Majesty. He also gained the vocal support of the old grand tutor, which was worth more than gold. While I was recovering from my injuries and miscarriage, disciples of the old grand tutor came to the Eastern Palace with gifts to visit me. They spoke with the crown prince, and many were impressed by his wisdom and character. The crown prince became increasingly sophisticated and displayed the demeanor of a refined, capable leader. He earned popular support and began receiving overtures from influential officials throughout the court. The 8th prince was the legitimate son of the current empress and the crown prince's most dangerous rival. 4 years, he had undermined and sabotaged both the crown prince and Princess Xiaoya. But this incident reversed their fortunes completely. One evening, the crown prince personally changed the bandages on my wounds. He looked at the injury on my abdomen, deep enough to see bone, with anguish in his eyes. "Linga, you've suffered so much. How could you throw yourself in front of that horse? You could have died." I lay in his embrace and gently kissed his cheek. "Your Highness is my husband. Naturally, I must plan for your future, for our future. Even if it costs me my life, I won't hesitate to help you." He pursed his lips, his expression pained. He tightened his grip on my hand. "Don't talk about dying. Don't ever say that. You are my only wife, my only love. If you share my hardships, you will absolutely share in my prosperity. I promise you that." His eyes flickered with determination. "Linga, I will make you the most noble woman in this entire world. I swear it." A few days later, my younger brother Adrian arrived at the Eastern Palace. He was 15 now, studying at the Imperial Academy thanks to the Crown Prince's recommendation. He came directly from his classes, dusty from the road, carrying several plump fish tied with straw rope. He thrust them at Nanny Chen, who still served our household. "Nanny, please cook these for my sister. She needs to rebuild her strength." Seeing him grown into a tall young man, I felt tears of relief prick my eyes. After the Crown Prince left us alone, Adrian stood in my room silently for a long time. Finally, he spoke, his voice trembling. "Elder sister, I'll study harder. I'll graduate with the highest honors. I'll become a marquis, a prime minister. I'll be your support, your protection. I'll back you up in everything. So please, can you take care of yourself? Can you love yourself and stop hurting yourself?" His eyes reddened. "If my future is built on your body and your life, I'll die right now. I'll go find Mother. Just consider me dead." All my carefully constructed masks and manipulations crumbled when facing him. During my years in the palace, I had only been able to see him once annually. Every time we met, he would watch me silently, memorizing my face, and then say quietly, "Elder sister has gotten thinner. Elder sister needs to eat well." Every letter he wrote me ended the same way: "Elder sister needs to eat well and take care of herself." Tears streamed down my face. I reached out and touched his cheek. "I'm not crying. And I understand what you're saying." He looked at me stubbornly. "If you're lying to me, I won't study anymore. I'll quit the academy. Elder sister, you have to believe me, even if you're not the crown princess, even if we have nothing, even if we're poor, I'll still work hard. I'll still study. I'll take care of you. We don't need all this power and wealth. He hastily wiped tears from his eyes with the back of his hand. I don't want a future that's purchased with your life. I want you to be healthy. I want you to live 100 years. Elder sister, you're all I have in this world. I pulled him into an embrace and stroked his head, smiling. It won't happen again. I promise. No more injuries. No more risks. Of course, I was lying to him. I had chosen a path where power was everything, where ambition drove every decision. I couldn't turn back even if I wanted to. And I didn't want to. I lived to be 89 years old, and my life was magnificent. My brother, just as he promised, excelled in his studies. He became the top scholar, then was appointed to increasingly important positions, eventually becoming second only to the emperor in authority. The path was difficult and dangerous. His youthful softness faded, replaced by sharp intelligence and carefully controlled ruthlessness. He said to me once, when he'd risen high enough, "Sister, I'll support you all the way to the top. The highest point. The pinnacle of power." From crown princess to Empress Dowager, I climbed every step. Through it all, one thing remained constant: the crown prince, who became emperor. He treated me the same for over 40 years of marriage. As for me, I plotted and schemed and calculated every single day, using him just as much as I used everyone else. He died before me. I thought I didn't love him, had never loved him. But when he was truly leaving my life forever, I felt something inside me crack and crumble. He lay on his deathbed and caressed my face, looking at me as gently as ever. He placed the imperial seal, the symbol of absolute power, the thing I'd craved for half my life, into my hand. In his will, he granted me the right to preside over the imperial court in our son's name, effectively making me the ruler of the empire. He toyed with my hair, now streaked with silver, just as he had on our wedding night when he'd nervously removed my hairpins with trembling young hands. "Linger," he whispered, "I love your ambition. I love your cunning and your schemes. I've always known you were using me. From the very first essay of yours I read, disguised as Xiaoye's work, I knew your capabilities. I knew your ambitions." Tears streamed down my face. He smiled and wiped them away. "I know you only pretended to be gentle and devoted. I've always known. And I didn't care. So go ahead, do what you've always wanted to do. Rule this empire. You don't have to hide anymore." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again with a bitter smile. "Linger, you're so annoying sometimes. You always forced me to read those endless memorials and reports, working late into the night. I barely had time to share meals with you. Do you know how long it's been since we last ate a proper meal together? Just the two of us." I could barely speak through my tears. He answered his own question, his voice fading. 33 days. I counted every one. His eyes closed for the final time. I wailed with grief. The force of my anguish made me cough up blood. I had always grown through loss. My mother's death taught me to hate. The emperor's death taught me, too late, to love. I died on a quiet night many years later, while reviewing state documents in my private study. I had poured my heart and soul into governing the empire with him, and then after him. It was the work of my entire life. My children surrounded my deathbed. They were all doing well, successful, confident, nothing like the twisted, cold child I had been. Unlike me, they had been raised with love. The emperor had been a devoted father. With my brother's support and protection, they grew up secure and emotionally healthy. My soul drifted above my body, watching my son, now emperor, continue on the path his father and I had laid out before we died. He asked my brother, who stood beside him as his most trusted advisor, what was Empress Dowager like when she was young? Before all the politics and power? My brother paused, as if sorting through memories. Then he smiled sadly. "I heard from our old nurse that when your mother was very young, before everything happened, she really liked acting spoiled with your grandmother. She climbed trees to steal bird eggs. She once got in a fight with the daughter of an official's family and made the girl cry so hard that your grandmother chased your mother around the courtyard with a fire poker, yelling for her to come back. He paused, his expression growing desolate. Unfortunately, after mother died, I never got to see my elder sister be that carefree and lively again. That little girl died the same day our mother did. My soul lingered, listening. That was true. The real Linger, the one who laughed and played and acted spoiled, had died at age 8. What remained was something else entirely. A weapon. A schemer. A survivor. But I had survived. I had won. I had reached the very pinnacle of power. And I had done it all myself. If you enjoyed this tale of ambition, revenge, and the price of power, make sure to subscribe to Lotus Tale Studios. Hit that like button and drop a comment telling me what you thought of Linger's journey from outcast daughter to Empress Dowager. Should I create more stories about fierce women who refuse to be defeated? Let me know. And don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss a new story. Until next time, this is Lotus Tale Studios, where every story blooms with drama and intrigue.